Welcome to another episode of Down the Barrel Podcast with Jimmy and Dino.
And sometimes Jared.
Down the Barrel Podcast is brought to you by the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association
and wolf.report. Wolf.report, a platform dedicated to elevating the voices of Minnesota hunters, trappers, and outdoor enthusiasts. Join us in advocating for responsible wolf management in Minnesota. Share your reports, photos, and stories, and together we will ensure that they are seen by all.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, protecting the future of deer and deer hunting through habitat, education, advocacy, and legislation.
Well, welcome back to Down the Barrel. Today we have Rod Dimich, founder of the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association.
One of the founders.
One of the founders, yes. And
I hate to correct it right away.
that's all right. That's all right.
That's why you're here.
When you get older, you do that all the time.
And then also the current editor of our Whitetails magazine. Welcome, Rod.
Yeah, thanks for coming,
you guys.
Rod.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
And in the words of the immortal Ron Burgundy, I find this podcast to be compelling and rich. It's awesome.
I think that's the first.
That is definitely a first for us.
Well, one of the first is I had to find out what a podcast was.
We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah,
Right.
You're stuck in the 60s,
Oh, man. Well, Rod, we want to start off by learning a bit more about you, kind of your history, your education, what prompted you to start MDHA?
Okay. Again, when you have a lot of water behind you, and a lot of the trail that you live behind you, I could go on and on and on, but I guess I'm not all that, excited about doing that. I'll jump right into, I was kind of born into a household of deer hunters, and my family grew up in, they were raised in Lawrence Lake. My dad's first generation American. My mother came from Yugoslavia. So I'm kind of a Depression era raised child where hunting was very important. So was fishing. And we also grew up on a farm in Greater Lawrence Lake. And so the background is, the hunting and fishing part. It was a part of not only traditionally getting the family together and friends together. It was part of the eating format for us. So I grew up in the western part of the Iron Range, Greenway of Coleraine, and I went a few places. I taught for 36 years, taught English, 33 years in Grand Rapids. And so my wife and I basically wanted to live here. So we moved, fortunate enough, both of us to get jobs here in Grand Rapids. And then when I first came here, I was also fortunate enough to meet guys like Wes Libby, Jim Lang, Dave Shaw, who were Isaac Walton members. Mm-hmm. And at that time, that was the thing, that and Ducks Unlimited. And other than that, there weren't too many. And I went to some Ike's meetings and I got to meet the guys who were older than I was at the time. And it was really interesting to find out the whole structure of an organization. And basically, they started Save Minnesota Deer in 1968 and 69. When we had these horrendous storms, it was just a horrible winter. And prior to that, deer hunting had actually been pretty good. I think it was 1965. They set a record for, you guys weren't around, so you don't remember that. But and then 68, 69 came, and it just went downhill. The season was closed, as you well know, in 1971. And then we floundered. People floundered about deer hunting, after 71, and a lot of things happened. And finally, in 1980, at an Ike's meeting, Dave Shaw said, "Boys, we got to do something." And the result was meeting in Dave Shaw's floral shop in Grand Rapids in the basement, of all places. And and Dave says, "Okay, this is it. We're gonna put together an organization." And after about 6 months, then we went public. So there's a lot more to it, but
Right.
Wow. I don't want to.
So it started in Shaw Florist basement. Huh?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had the smell of flowers mixed in with buck scent.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we didn't have the buck scent.
So back in when they shut down the season in the early 70s, how was that taken by the general public? I've always wondered that.
It was interesting. It was 1971, the year we got married, and my wife was pretty glad that I wasn't deer hunting that year. 'Cause
Yep.
kind of a goner during that time. People were ready for it because it had hit rock bottom.
Oh, wow.
It was just really bad. It's 1970. We had you could pick your own season. It was very short, and no, that was later on to pick your own. 70 was like a 2 or 3 day, and they ended up shooting almost as many deer
Really?
in that short time. And then the hunter said, "No, we've got to do this. We've got to close it." But it took a number of years doing different things, trying to figure out how to do. Bring the deer herd back, but it was not just hunting. Of course, there was predation. There were the wolves,
Right.
coyotes, bears. The habitat was very overmature. So, we decided we had to coordinate. When we began in 1980, we had to coordinate with forestry and varying other, Minnesota DNR organizations.
Yep.
So we often hear the story of, I think at the time it was still Save Minnesota Deer,
Yep.
but these hunters from the Grand Rapids area going around and collecting frozen deer carcasses, bringing them down to the Capitol,
Yeah.
throwing them on the steps. Were you there?
No, I wasn't there. I was still pretty young at that time, and I wasn't even in Grand Rapids at that time. But yeah, they told stories about that, and right on the Capitol steps, and these guys were very passionate about the things they did, and they just felt and if we go back a little bit too, you have to remember that deer hunting was basically from central Minnesota, maybe even north central Minnesota, all the way up to the north. Mm-hmm. There weren't many deer as there are now in central and southern. So a lot of the people that did not live here, that lived in the south or central Minnesota, they were very, very passionate about deer hunting because they came up north to their deer camps or where they camped out. So we garnered a lot of support. But again,
I can imagine.
it was, the deer hunting was all northern Minnesota.
Yeah. We're almost seeing the reverse of that now.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone I talk to that lives in the Iron Range or north, you ask, well, where's your deer camp? And, it used to be up Ely or wherever. And now I haven't heard of one north of Floodwood.
Right.
Everyone's heading south. I go down to Brainerd for deer camp,
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has changed over the years for sure. And with the forestry and the habitat, they gain that really well. But of course, with habitat, it also leans towards helping out everything else, predators. So
Right. And an interesting thing too, talking about the southern Minnesota and central. The crux of what they did environmentally and for the outdoors was based on the sportsmen's clubs. And they're still fantastic. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we decided we wanted to have the sportsman's club mentality and dedication, but we wanted it to be statewide.
Okay. Yep.
And that was not easy for a while because they wanted to raise the money and they wanted to keep the money, which they had always had done. But slowly they began to realize that, the big vision is about the whole state. And not just their small little communities.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's why we're fortunate enough to have 60 some chapters throughout the state,
Right.
And they are their local sportsman's club, but they get to play that larger role statewide and really contribute to helping out the deer herd across the state. That's great.
And I'm guessing early on, some of the chapters, especially like in the cities area, were probably some of your largest ones at first because most of those hunters would travel up north to the deer camp and, their getaways.
That's exactly right. And we always thought that eventually this organization would be moving more to the central part or even the Twin Cities. But what we found out is even though they had, the millions living there, the outstate basically had more members and more passionate members, more dedicated members. And I don't know if it's because there's too much to do in the cities or there's no sense of community. You know what I'm saying about the community?
Yep.
So basically, the organization, I think, and over the years has been, the strength has been in the outstate. And nothing against, the Twin Cities or the metropolitan areas, but the dedication has really come from the small communities.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot still today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
you look at our largest chapters, our largest banquets, they're kind of in the corners of the state.
Yeah, exactly.
Winona,
and that smaller, more tight-knit communities,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that those people have grown up where deer hunting season was a community event.
Right.
And I think from the metropolitan area, it was more of a vacation type event.
Yeah.
Go do
Escape
it,
from the
come
metro.
back.
Yeah.
Forget about it till next year.
Yep.
Well, and just like now, I know there's quite a few, just Itasca and Hibbing. I know that there's a decent amount of members for those chapters that live in the metro area, but their membership is to, say, the Itasca chapter because their deer camp is up here, their cabins up here. So instead of being part of, say, we'll just say North Suburban chapter, which is where maybe they reside, and a lot of them are still part of both chapters.
Right.
But they tend to focus a little bit more, especially in the fall, on, say the Itasca chapter in this area, same with Hibbing. I see that a lot in Hibbing and even Sturgeon River to some extent,
Yeah.
So.
Well, it makes sense. If they're hunting camps in this area, they want projects done around their hunting camp.
Exactly.
Right.
And they'll put a little bit more focus on that as well, especially for the habitat, because obviously you're not getting habitat in, Anoka as much or St. Paul. So they'll focus a little bit more on that. So
For sure.
Yeah, we wanted to take the deer camp mentality and involvement, and we wanted to expand it to the MDHA. In fact, when we first came out, we said we are Minnesota's deer camp, made up of all you little deer camps out there, and we're the voice of the Minnesota deer hunter. And then we also talked about MDHA. That was a big discussion point. Should it be hunters? And if you look around the country, there are very few organizations that have the word hunters in it. And we were adamant. We wanted that.
Okay.
And we did a lot of things that were important to us as hunters, but we also wanted to incorporate people who just love deer, love habitat, love wildlife. So we wanted to make sure that first and foremost we were a hunting organization. And that's been a good move for us.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. How did you come up with Minnesota Deer Hunters Association?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Okay.
It was going to be. And another thing too was MDA. That had other connotations too, but we really wanted hunters in there, and we won. Those of us that were, and again, we didn't necessarily have everything go along smoothly either. We had our discussions, but from the very get-go of our organization, and it's still that way, and I commend you guys too for doing this, one of our main premises was that we could disagree without disliking.
Right.
And in this day and age of divided camps, divided families, divided friendships, divided this, divided that, it's so important that you can disagree without disliking. Jim Lang always said that. And we'd run a meeting, and of course, everybody wants to have their word in, and they want to say it sometimes a little more emphatically. And we didn't have any tables tipped over or anything like that, or bottles thrown. But that was one of the keys, to make sure that we could disagree without disliking, and it still is that way.
It is.
Internally, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe not.
And I guess that's one good thing, and one thing that MDHA does well is because we've got members from all walks of life, all political views, everything. It's the organization for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, it's the deer hunting.
Exactly.
That's what brings us all together.
I think so.
Yeah.
So was there a deciding factor to stay within Minnesota, instead of going, say, even tri-state or nationwide compared to like DU, national, or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dean, because that was one of the first things that came up.
Yeah.
Because 2 years following our inception came Pheasants Forever.
Okay.
And immediately, and I was one who wanted to do that. I wanted to go national, and there were a number of us that did, and and we lost out on that because the idea was that we focus on Minnesota,
Yep.
and if other people wanted to pattern after us, which they did, other ones did, they could do so, but we wanted to focus on Minnesota. And, it's really interesting, too, because Pheasants Forever came right after us. And I've talked to a number of pheasant people over the years, Pheasants Forever people. And I don't want to say that I created it, but I started using when we started the magazine in 1980. Actually, as a 6-page mimeographed, not really a magazine at all, more of a newsletter. But we started signing things with Whitetails Forever.
Yeah, I saw that in some of the old ones.
Yeah, and that's where Pheasants Forever got theirs. And we kind of wish we would have been called Whitetails Forever. Hindsight,
right.
was 2020.
Yep. Might still be open.
Yeah.
Well, we got Whitetails Unlimited now.
Right.
Whitetails Unlimited, and then QDMA, and then there was a split off Quality Deer Management Association. Then they had a split off that was National Deer Alliance, and then obviously with the turn of COVID and everything, then they
Consolidated
and
under
become
right.
NDA, National Deer Association.
Yep.
Right.
And honestly, we've looked. So then we've got Mule Deer Foundation, and we've looked around. Minnesota is unique because we're about the only state organization.
There's a few out there,
nonprofit.
but not many that have much traction.
Right.
Or that share the same focus on wild deer and wild deer hunting opportunities.
Right,
True. Like what comes to mind immediately when I think of a statewide deer-focused organization is the Texas Deer Association, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah.
But they're very focused on deer farms, and high fence
And
hunting.
down there, it
Well, that makes sense for them down there because they have a lot of that. It's a big business down there.
Yeah, but
I often wonder, how do you, when you farm deer, how do you get them planted in the ground?
I wondered that
it takes
too.
a lot of water.
Yeah, it's just an enigma
and
to me
a
to
big
figure out
excavator.
I've got a buddy. I can make a couple calls and find out.
Right? I would like to know because I'd like to grow some big old deer.
I would too. What kind of
you just
soil is
stick
that?
the antler in the ground, and
I've tried that. Nothing came out of it.
That reminds me of what my dad used to say back in the day. I'm at that age where now things are back in the day. But he said where we grew up, Lawrence Lake, Minnesota, and not to besmirch Lawrence Lake.
you better not because that's where I live.
Oh, that's right. You live, close to where I was born. Actually, I don't know if you've seen the statue that's there.
Rod knows my property better than I do.
Right, exactly.
When he found out where I lived, he started telling me, "Well, you should go check out around, over here."
Yeah, my dad actually owned land there, and he sold it because on the lake. Because we were too busy playing baseball. So, my brother and I didn't believe it, but but anyhow, what he said is, the old saying is you can't put a plow in the ground in Lawrence Lake without hitting a moonshine still or a deer hide. So, again, that's in the old days too. But getting back to that, and I know you guys do this, and I know. The people in MDHA, the guys and gals, they're so incredible. It's a common cause that we're dealing with right now. And I think one thing that we looked at way back when was that it was a common cause, that we were all together. And basically what's happened, and I'm very concerned about this, as you all are, the common cause has been splintered a little bit. Whereas people maybe disagree, so now they're gone. Go back to baiting, for example. When we pushed to have baiting illegal, we lost members because of that. And varying other things. But we did something like we raised the deer stand height from 6 to 9 feet. Well, that's not a problem type of thing. But the anti-hunters that we were really concerned about in the 80s when they first started getting momentum, they have a common cause, and they don't disagree with one another. Mm-hmm. Their aim is to stop hunting and to stop let me rephrase that. They want animal rights to be human rights, and that cannot be. And one big thing they always, and I read a lot, I was on a lot of mailing lists of anti-hunting groups, and one of the things they said is that hunters will destroy themselves from within. They will splinter into groups, and they will be angry about this and about that, and apathy, hunter apathy. The anti-hunters will only win if we splinter and break off pieces of the hunting community, and if we don't stick together. And I hate to be on a soapbox about that, but it's so true, because they'll just let us dwindle away, and it doesn't make any difference, gun rights or whatever it is, if people don't care about having those rights of hunting, firearms, whatever it might be. And the anti-hunters just, let everything slide, because wait for us to destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
I hate to be negative.
Well,
No,
true,
I would listen to you stand on that soapbox all day. And I will say I agree with that sentiment, that we have the potential to destroy ourselves from within, but almost across the board. If you're involved in a conservation organization, you're going to have the backs of every other conservation organization in the state. If we're working on a project and we need the support of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Pheasants Forever, Trout Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, 9 times out of 10, where do I sign? How do I get involved? Yeah. How do I support you? And when the time comes, I know you'll support me as well. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very encouraged. I think the conservation community is so large, but so small at the same time. Because while we all do focus on a different species or a different set of species, we all want the same thing, which is a thriving ecological landscape. And we're gonna support each other towards that end any way we can.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, Jared. Mm-hmm. I think we've turned that corner and we're heading in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So I might have sounded a little more doomsday than I should have.
Well,
I don't think so at all. Yeah. Because we had that issue, and we still have that issue, with the shotgun zone.
Yep.
With crossbows. That was the 2 major players in the last 4 years.
Yep.
And the wolf.
Yeah.
Yep. And even CWD, we still have those issues. And probably the biggest ones have been the crossbow, the shotgun zone, and then the wolf in the most recent, last 2 years for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Have been the biggest things to
divide
CWD. To divide us, or try to divide us in a way.
Well, but I think, to Rod's point, which you said much more eloquently than I'm about to try to repeat, is that while we may disagree, we're going to disagree in a respectful way, and we're going to keep it civil and understand that in the end, we all want what is best for our white-tailed deer herd, for hunters in the state of Minnesota.
For sure.
We might disagree on how to get to that goal, but that's not going to make me turn my back on you,
Exactly. I'm not going to go, well, I'm just going to pull my membership.
Well said. And that's what happened in the past.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's still,
I'm going to take my ball and go home.
It still happens today, and it's like, but there's that's one piece of the pie that you're just going to pull everything and run. It's like, but you believe in everything else.
Yeah, 99% is good, but that 1%, I'm done.
Yep. And it's like, but that's today's society.
Right.
And that's so sad. Because that's the way it is.
Right.
And within Minnesota, we're the main one. You know, I mean, you got BHA. You know, they do great things.
Love them.
They're small
Absolutely.
fish
I'm a member.
in the state. You know, when you think about it,
Right.
we have the most members, the most pull within the state of an organization.
Right.
You know, for what we do,
Right.
because you know, Whitetails Unlimited, you know, they're a good organization. They've got good members. They're more nationwide, but within the state, they don't do as much. They have events. They have their fundraisers, which is great. They're good events. I know a lot of people that go to them, but their money disappears.
Right.
It goes elsewhere.
Right.
They
Goes
still
outside
put
the
money
borders.
within the state, but not as much as MDHA.
Well, that's really what sets us apart. You know,
Exactly.
every single dollar we raise, not $1 that we raise is going to leave the state of Minnesota.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
not one organization that can say that within the state.
Yeah, not
Conservation.
only that,
Conservation.
the whole grassroots concept of MDHA is so important. I had some people back in the day when I was president and stuff, and they said, you know, you're giving your members way too much power, way too much input. You know, just take their money, their donations. I don't mean they're charlatans or anything like that, but they said you're going to have more problems giving people input like you do. And we said, no, this is what we're all about. And there are very few organizations where you can actually vote on resolutions and in the direction of where your organization is going. And we're one of them, if not the only one.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, where can you go to a meeting and decide where that organization's direction is going to go? I mean, yeah, it's amazing. I'm so proud of MDHA, and I've been, you know, part of it for 44 years now, and since I've been 5, so, you know, I'm 49 now. That's why I'm glad we're not on TV.
Right.
Yeah, you can say that totally.
Well, and I just want to piggyback off that and say early December, we will be publishing our list, our dates and schedule for our regional meetings. And that is the best opportunity as a member of MDHA to show up to your local regional meeting, listen to the issues that our members are voting on, cast your vote, let your chapters know how you want to see us stand on a particular issue, and really have your voice matter, because that's where a lot of that voting happens, is at regional meetings, at least to get the summary of those potential initiatives that we're going to undertake, and then show up to the chapter and cast your vote. The way your chapter votes, the majority of your chapter votes, it's like the Electoral College. That based on the size of your chapter, that's how many votes you're going to get on that issue.
Yeah.
And we take it to heart. You know, we follow the democratic process, whatever the majority of our members want to see. That's how I know how to do my job. That's how I know how to direct our lobbyist to do his job at the Capitol. And yeah, like you said, Rod, there's not a lot of organizations that can say that.
No.
You know, there might be a board of 10 or so individuals, 10 to 20 individuals, and their votes are the only one that counts.
Right. And they may only hear from 2 or 3 people.
Right. Right.
You know,
And those boards are probably appointed boards.
Right.
Our board members are elected by our members. That's pretty unique.
Oh, it's incredible. You know, no matter how loudly you shout and pound the table or whatever, it doesn't make any difference. It's pure democracy. And when we set it up, and it wasn't, I'm not going to take credit, Wes Libby was very good at that. They looked at how democracy is set up within the states, and that's what we did. We still are based on districts and regional directors, and it's pure democracy. And sure, not all of us are going to get our way all the time.
Right.
But, you know, I learned at a young age, such is life. You know,
Yep.
I would tell my dad, I think, and he said, well, okay, good. But that doesn't mean you're going to get what you think.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
I do want to commend you guys on the Wolf Report, though.
Well,
And Down the Barrel, of course, just
absolutely
incredible. You're getting some things out to the people who need to be reached, and nothing against, like, let's say the Voyageurs Wolf Project. I love watching those critters go across that beaver dam. But too often, you're getting that anthropomorphism, the Bambi syndrome that's in there. And like the live cams watching the eagles and all of that, it's fine and dandy if you can draw the line between the pet syndrome and a wild animal.
Right. Yep.
And that's what we do. You know, and if you're starting naming this eaglet or whatever it might be, slowly but surely you get into the wild animals are pets type of thing,
right.
and the Bambi
Humanize
syndrome,
almost,
and
That's why you get people in national parks trying to pet a bison.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's get out and go pet that.
Right.
Let's take a selfie with it behind me in the 10 yards.
It has to be like my dog.
I've got to say, those are some of my favorite videos.
I
to
love
watch.
watching those videos.
Well, that is-
You know.
I mean, yeah, some of them get pretty bad, but it's like, really,
well,
you play stupid games.
Yeah, that's what we call education. That happened. That's education in a hurry.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, man.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, and then it's showing up too, you know, in like California or wherever it might be with the coyotes or cougars or whatever it might be. This whole Bambi syndrome concept, and you know, people don't think about how did Bambi's father have antlers when Bambi still has spots? Well, there's something wrong in that equation. But for people who are not like we who grew up in the outdoors or immersed in it, that's totally believable, you know, and I kind of like Bambi, but
I loved that movie growing up, but I mean, I couldn't be the only one that just kind of wanted to shoot Bambi's dad.
I wanted to desperately shoot.
I don't know if I have ever in person seen a buck as good as Bambi's dad.
I know. I know.
And then when Bambi was larger and adult, it's like, wow, I want to shoot that thing.
Right?
You know? I mean, yeah, he was Bambi once, but yeah. I'd mount him on my wall.
I'd put Thumper in a stew.
Right.
oh, you're gonna hear it now.
Now you got one. Now you got
I'm scared of
No,
these
you've done
thumpers.
it.
Yeah, you guys.
You crossed the line now, man. Not the bunnies.
But,
Notice I didn't mention flour. I'm not going to eat flour.
I just killed a flower the other day.
I almost did last night. I let my dogs off, and the skunk went running in through the trees. So I quickly called the dogs back in and grabbed the shotgun. And
That's what happens when you steal my eggs, buddy.
But getting back to the regional meetings, attending your chapter meetings, and you have a voice if you attend the meetings, and and that's a cool thing about it.
Yeah.
But you have to be there.
Right.
You have to participate. I mean, it's just like anything else. It's just like the normal election, and if you don't vote, you got to vote.
Yeah.
Right.
To make changes. Just like you got to attend your meetings, attend the regional meetings, be a participant to make a change. If you don't want to see this happen or you want to see something else happen, you got to be there.
And if you don't vote, you have no right to complain about anything.
Right. If you're not in the process, I mean, you're not in the process then.
I know our struggle is with MDHA is a lot of people, because they're a Minnesota hunter. Yes, we want Minnesota hunters' rights. Our members are first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And yes, we want every hunter's rights to be ours. But again, we get a lot of non-members that just go, well, they don't care about what other people think. It's like, okay, well, we do, but are you a member?
Yeah.
If you have a member, you truly have a voice in what we do. But as a non-member, we're trying to do what our members want to do.
Right.
Yeah. If you don't speak up, don't get shocked when your voice isn't heard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or when they go, well, they didn't ask all Minnesota hunters. Nope. We asked MDHA members.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I am not friends with Google. I don't have your email address if you're not a member. And even if you are a member and you haven't shared your email address, I do not have your email address.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into a telethon for membership, but basically it is. Because if you're not a member, then you're not helping the cause.
Yeah,
to help deer, help us help deer and deer hunting.
Yep.
And I don't mean to do the blame game, but it's so important. When we first began, we had thousands of members right away. And then all of a sudden it plateaued, and they said, well, deer hunting's good. Why do we need MDHA? Well, we need members because the hunting people, the animal rights people, their numbers are growing. And yes, we still have people who are hunting, but we can't do this out of the goodness of our intentions or the goodness of our hearts, although it is a labor of love for most of us, almost all of our members, but we still need membership. And I want you to pledge today. That sounds
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. It's like an NPR pledge drive.
Go for it. Preach.
But no, it's a really good point. You know, if we look at the Give to the Max campaign that happens throughout the state of Minnesota, where you can donate to any nonprofit that chooses to participate.
Right.
And MDHA, I think last year we brought in 15, 16,000.
Yeah.
And then you look at International Wolf Center, and I believe they brought in like 3.1 million.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the Voyageurs goes out and asks for 600,000, and it takes them about a week or 10 days.
Right.
Yep.
And again, that goes back to the pet syndrome, and we have the passion, and just we have the loyalty. We just need to get people a little bit more involved, and
Yeah.
and that's what it takes.
Yeah. It's the best $35 you can spend north of the border.
For sure. Definitely. Most definitely. Well, and then, I know we've talked about it before, and nothing bad against deer hunting. I'm a deer hunter, and I'm cheap. But when you look at some, Rocky Mountain elk, it takes a lot of money to hunt elk, to go out and hunt it. Pheasants, there's a lot of money when it comes to pheasants because, your dogs, shotguns are typically more expensive. The nice ones, not the ones I shoot.
You got to train
decent.
that dog at a game farm, $25 a bird these days.
Yep. And then, your duck hunting, that takes a lot. Deer hunting, there's not a lot of entry to barrier. You can get into deer hunting for very cheap if you wanted to. Let's just talk the basics. Camo. You can get some really good camo for a cheap price if you don't want to go, Sitka and, be the poster boy for anything like that.
Blaze orange is really cheap.
Yep, just blaze orange. And then, you get your grandpa's rifle.
Everybody listening and not listening has a relative with a Winchester 30-30.
Exactly. You get your dad's, your grandpa's rifle. You can go out. You don't need a ground blind, a deer stand, anything like that. You can walk a trail and you can hunt.
Yep.
And you can be very successful. Fairly easy in all the public land around. You can do it.
Well, yeah.
So with that, I think that's a lot of struggle as well to even gain some membership because...
Well, and I think that goes back to MDHA's, I call it public land mission.
Yeah.
People can do that because of the work that MDHA has done over the years of increasing, enhancing, improving the public land access.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, David Lean has written for us many times over the years from back on. And that's, it's just crucial. It really is.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Jim, you mentioned something about blaze orange, and I hate to, just kind of change the direction right here. But I think one thing that's so important that MDHA has done is we've included the females in hunting.
Yeah.
Back when I started hunting in 1960, when I was 12, girls weren't allowed to be at deer camp. And that's kind of the way it was for a long, long time. And I wrote a little piece in, I think it was 1982 in the Whitetails. And I wrote it was a letter from a son to a dad, thanking dad for taking him to deer camp and this and that. And then there was another letter and said, Dad, thank you for hunting and blah, blah, blah. But Dad, I wish I could have gone. Signed, your daughter. We started that, big time, to make sure or to hopefully get more females involved.
Yeah.
And it's
I love it. I have 2 daughters, so absolutely I agree with that.
It's like female sports, women's sports, girls' sports now. It's just a whole new dimension. And getting back to the Blaze Orange, I remember when we were switching over from red, which is everybody said, "Oh, you got to have." Well, red is dark. You know, I mean, it's hard to see. And we were working with the DNR at that time, and I don't remember if it was Roger Holmes or whomever, but the number one most visible color was hot pink, blaze pink. But they said, no way, guys, the He-Man hunters are not going to wear that. Well, all of a sudden, here I am wearing a pink and gray MDHA hat also. But, so I really think that's one of our greatest accomplishments is to get the girls into the sport and the females. Before it was the cook. I remember my cousin would come up and she'd end up doing the dishes, and we were the same age, and we'd be sitting around, and the moms and the daughters would be doing the cooking and the cleaning. Well, come a long way.
Oh, for sure. Big
good long way.
And you look at four-corn camps that our kids went to, it was pretty well even, if not a hair more in the.
Well, yeah, and they have a girls only too.
They do.
We got a couple
and
of
that's
those.
very
My daughter
popular.
went to the girls only camp.
Girls only,
four-corn
yeah.
camp, yeah.
No, I think it's a great trend that we're seeing, getting more women and young girls into the outdoor and shooting sports.
And we were on the ground floor of that. I mean, we really were. We had one of the first women as a columnist for an outdoor magazine, Jean Bergerson.
Okay.
And then her name escapes me right now. Betty Wilkins.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and she's writing for us again.
Yeah.
She was one of the first. I mean, this is 40 years ago, and we were on the ground floor of that. So we're proud of that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then with that, just the four-corn camps alone, there's not many other organizations that focus so much on the youth that MDHA does.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And see, we're not single issue. People say, well, what do you do? And I said, well, how long do you have?
Exactly.
I mean, to go over what we've accomplished, it's just, and, Garth Albers was one of the guys, our current president, and with a number of Dennis Korberg, people that have been around as long as I have in the MDHA, and you look back and chronicle the things that we've done, it's just amazing. It really is.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're still around,
Yeah.
Poor not Delta, but the Minnesota Waterfowl Association is no longer. And that's kind of scary, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, it's nice to see though. It's still growing,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I hope one day I can be in your spot.
Right.
Talking about how,
Exactly.
we got rid of this guy or something.
Right. Well,
Being on the first podcast. Yeah.
Right. I remember when we started that podcast.
Yeah. Now that
you
you
might
guys-
be introduced as a founder of Down the Barrel, but not
okay.
MDHA.
All right. Wolf Report, bud.
There you go. There you go.
Yep. And that all started with a pipe dream in a deer stand.
When I go back to thinking about when I started in 1960 as a 12-year-old, and up until today, of course, and a lot of people my age like to poo-poo, the modern hunter and the stands and the technology and all of that. See, I'm just the opposite. If you can be out there longer, you're going to enjoy it. Before, if you lasted an hour and a half with those quilted tan insulated underwear on and pullover sweatshirts, you were a real guy back then. Why be miserable? Do we want vehicles now without heaters and without air conditioners and power windows and all of that? No. I think technology has given us a whole new view on this, including the trail cameras and all kinds of the clothing. The key is, with these advancements, we really need to have self-regulation. And that doesn't necessarily mean passing up bucks, for example. But maybe start to think as you get a little bit older, let the kids shoot a spike or a four-corn. And, those of us that have shot some deer over the years, maybe we'll wait you know, and with technology comes responsibility, and I think MDHA is really focused on that. And I know our articles are dealing with it, and yeah, it's like fishing. You know, you can have the live scope, you can have the GPS and all of that. You have to self-regulate. You know, you just have to.
Right.
And look what's happening on deer stands now. They got kids taking pictures of chickadees landing on their gun barrel, you know, or an ermine that's scurrying underneath a stand, and they're texting their friends and saying, you know, I just saw a grouse strut by. And I go back to, I've written about this a million times, how I threw my grandpa's inherited knife at a grouse and skittered under the leaves for about 20 feet, and I'd spent an hour and a half looking for it, and my dad came over right away and said, well, you got to have the skid thing, you know, and he found it right away. But yeah, so kids do wonderful things on wonderfully. Well, not according to my dad. But,
Any dad.
yeah, it's like the first time I missed a deer, and I said, the tracks are right over here. And my dad says, you know, son, he says, tracks make poor soup. That's what he heard.
Yep.
Well,
That was at Bass Lake. Oh, I can't say where you live.
No, that's all right. It's
There's
out
a million.
there.
There's a million
It's
of them,
been posted.
well, and with that, you know, and technology and easier hunting. So hunting the first year with my daughter in a box blind, and we didn't need the heater, but just, you know, otherwise when I first started hunting, we were in ladder stands and just exposed to the elements. Granted, this was youth season, so it was a lot warmer. But later on, she was texting her friends, you know, I just saw, you know, a buck, or I saw a bunch of doe or whatever else. But then later we didn't get one, so she hunted in regular season. It was colder. So then we were in a box blind again with a heater. And within 20 minutes, told her, put on, you know, good socks, you know, you got good boots. Within 20 minutes, her feet are freezing. It's like we're in a box blind with a heater. So take her boots off. You know, I put the sticky
Foot warmers.
foot warmers on. That didn't help. So put the feet, you know, by the heater, crank up the heater a little bit. Dad's sweating, taking his, you know, jacket off. It's like, okay, this is ridiculous, you know. And but she was getting warm. So I was like, all right, that was good. Now we can last another hour. 2 hours go by, I look over, she's asleep. It's like, okay. But the point, if we were in a regular double tree stand, she would have been done in those 20 minutes,
Right.
because we wouldn't be able to warm her up. And we didn't see a whole lot of deer that day, but it was just being out there together.
Right.
To where if we were in a regular ladder stand with even maybe a blanket, might have been the only thing.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I wouldn't even had a blanket. Just, you can tough it out. But we'd have been done in half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then factor in
I've
all
been
the
there.
safety concerns.
Right. Yep. Right.
You know, I remember going up in deer stand. I remember falling through one. Luckily, I caught myself. But,
Right.
you know, with the advent of all the newer stands and the safety and the color, it's just so much safer. You know, I started hunting with what my dad called the dirty 30, you know, with the hammers. If it slipped out, it went off.
Yep.
Now they have safety. I mean, that was terrifying with those guns. And just the clothing and the safety and everything is just, I'm all for it. I really am.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all climbed down a ladder stand or a climber or whatever when you can't feel your feet.
Yep.
You know, and
Yeah.
it can be scary. And
Yeah.
let's put in a little plug here for hunter safety. Wear your harness if you're
Right.
going up in a tree this fall.
Yeah. How many of us had close calls or, you know, fallen, or know somebody who fell and got
Absolutely.
hurt? You know, we know a guy moving his tree stand around and didn't have his lineman's on or anything, and he fell 20 feet, broke his leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, luckily he had enough cell service to get somebody, because he was way back in the swamp. Luckily, he had enough cell service to call somebody to know where he was at,
Right.
to get to him. Otherwise, he may not be here.
Oh, we ran that a few years ago. We ran that story of a guy from northern Minnesota that was bear hunting by himself, didn't have a cell phone, and all this stuff, and he fell. And he laid out there 3 days.
Oh, man.
Until his grandson came up. It was a 3-part series. It's quite a story. But yeah.
Yeah.
3
No,
days.
I've never fallen. I would have, though, had I not had my tether on.
Yeah.
We all fall asleep in the stand sometimes.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, dude, when I
Fell
think about
forward
it, it's
and
like,
been there.
caught by the tether.
there's times that I'll put my the harness on top, and then I'll do my linemen's around because I'm like, yep, I know I'm going to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So I'm putting my tether and my linemen's around. To where, granted, I'm not going to stand up very quick,
Right.
but if I'm rifle hunting, it's okay. But if I'm bow hunting, then it kind of sucks. But there's been a few times where that lineman's has really helped me from just
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
falling face first out of the stand. So
Yep.
100%.
Woke me up a few times.
Oh, yeah. A little scary.
when it's
Yeah.
blowing
Your eyes
really
open
hard.
and you're looking down, but you're
Yeah.
not quite falling.
Yep, exactly.
You know, another thing too that I was thinking about as kind of getting ready to talk to with the VIPs, the dream team here. With you guys. One thing that's changed, I think, dramatically, and I think it's really for the better, is the locavore movement. The idea of harvesting what you or eating what you've harvested,
Right,
whether it be a
yes.
garden or Meat Eater is one that kind of is based on that. But I remember deer steaks, we'd have those big round steaks like that, and they were kind of tough as nails and smothered with onions, but most kids didn't like onions and mushrooms. So I think that's really made a big difference. I really do. The barbecuing and not just at deer camp, but, making it into sausage or bringing it to some of our great sausage and stick makers, and the whole idea of the sustenance from natural foods, and that's what deer hunting's all about.
Yes.
We ran a piece from an avowed anti-hunter about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now, on the whitetails, and that's what she was. She was totally against it. Then she got into the locavore, the idea of eating things from the land and now she's a great proponent of it and has written cookbooks and everything. So,
Well, that's always my argument when I talk to those people that are vegetarian, vegan for environmental reasons, right?
right.
I guarantee you my venison has much less of an ecological impact than your tofu.
Right. 100%. My venison was never on a semi-truck.
or a ship at sea for months at a time.
Yep, exactly.
Great point. That is so true.
So, Rod, over the years, MDHA has worked with many a famous person. And I know I was going through some of the old magazines a week or so ago, and I saw an article where you guys actually did a little giveaway with Mr. Fred Bear. How awesome is that?
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely true, Jim. Is present company included, not excluded.
Oh, wow. Are we being included with the Fred Bear right now?
I mean, that might be a little stretch, but
I think Fred would approve.
Yeah,
I like Fred. I've always liked Fred.
Yep, I think so too.
Yeah, what did he say? Take your kids hunting so you don't have to hunt for your kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We had a Bronco. Of course, it was a precursor to what we're doing with Chevrolet now.
Right.
But I don't think it was as financially viable back then.
You're right.
But I think it was more in 1984. And back then, I wish I would have known how important it was to be there with Fred Bear. And in fact, Jim, when you just brought it up here, I had kind of forgotten about that.
Yeah.
But it was, the man, if you read any of his writings or looked at his lifestyle, I mean, and what he did for hunting, and not only bow hunting, but hunting in general, is absolutely incredible. But Yeah, we had a lot of help. We really did early on. Ron Shera was great.
Yeah.
He has a low membership number. I think he claims it's 13, but I think it's a little bit more like 18. But we had a lot of help. We really did.
Wow. Yeah, because I know you guys used to have articles written by some other outdoor celebrities, I'll say, in Minnesota. Babe Winkleman was one of them.
Yes. He's a columnist.
Did you guys ever work with Butch Furtman?
Funny you should bring that up, Jim, because that's absolutely true. Butch, his brother Mike Furtman, got to know through the Outdoor Writers of America, and he's an exceptional photographer.
Yeah.
I follow him online, and
I think I do too.
Mainly ducks and waterfowl and dogs. But he did a cover for us, which was incredible. But the first time we got on TV, I was president, and I got on Butch Furtman's program.
Okay.
And I was all nervous. I mean, it really was. In 1980, I was just a kid, kind of. And pup in the eyes of time, I used to call it. But and I was nervous, and I asked the director, I said, geez, I'm really nervous. I said, I'm a teacher, I talk all the time, but this is totally different. He says, don't worry, Butch will make more mistakes, he says, than you. He says, he'll cover up. And Butch was just a great guy. And we did some TV shows. We did a lot of radio back then. And to kind of date everything, when we went on the road, we had a slideshow.
Okay, wow.
And it was pretty incredible. High tech back in the day, and it showed all of the different things and that we had done, and we had old deer camp photos in there and slides, And of course, if the bulb burned out, then we were in big trouble.
And where would you show those slides at? Was it just sports shows, or?
Yeah, we did it there, but mainly what we did is we had welcome to MDHA nights where we were trying to form chapters and get members.
Okay.
And it was usually at OVFWs, Legion clubs, Moose clubs, Eagles clubs, that type of thing that were gracious enough to have us there. Yeah. So... and we did a lot. We were on the road quite a bit, maybe not as much as Jared is today, but, it was really fun, too, because it was a crusade. Deer hunting just wasn't very good. And shortly thereafter, it got good again.
Yeah.
So, and we like to take all the credit.
As you should.
Yeah, exactly.
And you mentioned David Lean.
Yes, I did. David Lean. I think he's like a co-chair for the backcountry hunters and anglers right now. Anyway,
I think he's one of the founders.
Yeah,
also.
founders. Yeah.
He brought something to our magazine. Again, I'd mentioned before, it was when we began. Jim Lang and I were the first editors in the fall of 1980. It was 6 pages, mimeographed. And it still was, I don't even know if we had a picture in it. Then we went to a soft cover and color eventually when Ed Schmidt came aboard in 1984. But what David did, he added a historical piece, an environmental outdoors / history lesson type of thing that... it was exceptional. It really was. Yeah. And he did the backgrounds on Teddy Roosevelt and things like that. And I kind of wish he still did some pieces for us. Yeah. But we have quality writers right now. We really do. Plus our own people like Jared and
right.
We always wait till the last minute to get his in. By the way,
it's kind of like on the back of your mind. Oh yeah, there's Jared.
Yeah, that's right. We do need a piece.
When's the deadline for Jared's article again? Oh, it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And with whitetails, if you haven't read that or looked at the last few issues, even, that is an exceptionally well piece.
Well done.
Well done piece. Yeah. The photos, the coloring, the articles. I honestly don't read it as much as probably I should. Yeah. It doesn't help being on the staff and help putting it together.
Well, Jared will read it to you if you want.
Oh, he will.
Yeah, I know it's hard for you.
It is hard for me to read. I like the pictures. That's probably what I gravitate to the most.
Right.
The big colors and pictures, and that's what I like.
You just do the scavenger hunt in there.
Pretty much.
Well, it's for somebody. I was wondering who that was for.
Yeah.
And people say that they say that print media, is is going, like the dodo bird and that type of thing. But that's not true. And yes, it's gone down a little, but it's so important to have something in your hand that you can see, that can lay there, that you don't have to punch it in on your phone or your computer laptop or whatever it is. And Forum News does it for us, and they do an exceptional job. And we have a great team with Bree Stackley and Joe Canella and Jared and Dean. We really have fun doing it, actually. But it's so important. It not only gives you an up-to-date, it chronicles our history, like Jim was talking about and Dean was talking about. You can look, and Jared actually too. We let him talk once in a while. You can look back into 1980. You can see a chronicle every 3 months of what we have done.
Yeah.
In 44 years.
Yeah.
Who else does that?
Right, and that's when I was thinking about that the other day when I was going through it, how handy it is to have that record, to go back, meet the people that were working back then, see what they did, see how they felt, what they were dealing with. I mean, that is so important for somebody like me coming on new on board to learn some of the history.
Well, and then to even when people say, you guys haven't done this or that, and, you guys never done this. Well, I call BS on that. Look at whitetails back in, we can go back. Fall of 1994, we have an article on it. So guess what? We did it then.
Exactly.
And we're still working on it.
Yeah, it's not new. Trust me.
And when you say white tails, of course, now Ed Schmidt coined the name. It's not TAILS. It's TALES.
Yeah,
because we're telling tales about whitetails.
My computer has finally learned that.
My computer hates that.
It does, but it's starting to learn it more the more I type it.
Yeah. And again, Pheasants Forever, they have rooster tails, see? I think they were on our coattails.
Right.
A little bit,
How do you spell coattails?
I think it's AILS.
But no.
Maybe it's ALS.
To Rod's point, we do have some amazing writers in here. And, we talked about Fred Bear a little bit ago. And I want to say it was the winter issue 2 years ago now, the Hunting with the Old Bear piece. I can't remember who wrote that one. But great piece about, breaking out the old recurve. And
we had pictures. We used some Fred Bear pictures in there.
Right.
Yeah. But something else that I always look forward to in whitetails is Tim Kraski's pieces.
Yeah.
The recipes that he does in here. We also mentioned Meat Eater earlier. And I'm one of those people that equal parts watches Meat Eater for the hunt, but also for
the recipes,
processing, and how they cook different wild game. I'm always looking for new ideas because that's why we hunt, right? It's not just to hang antlers on the wall.
Oh, for sure.
To provide for the family.
It's good food. It's good food.
This guy.
Oh yeah, I go out there to get meat. I am not going to deny it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you break down hunting and the shooting is generally seconds.
Yeah.
It's the sum of the parts is just incredible, and that's what it's all about, including the anticipation, preparation. I enjoy going out and working on deer stands and just scouting and
getting outdoors.
I mean, it's just a huge part of it. In fact, it's probably the eating part is right up there too.
And I think the processing afterwards is an art too. If you do it yourself, if you take that on, that's a great thing to learn too.
Exactly.
And that's something I want to learn more of. I just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to start with how to pour a bowl of cereal. And once you master that, we can work up to
get that roast off the
I can fry an egg. I mean, my wife will tell this story. So years ago, our daughter was very little. I don't know, maybe she was 6 or 7, and I was at home with her. I think she was sick or something, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make his breakfast. I'm going to be that dad. I'm going to make his breakfast. I don't cook. I mean, if it's in a box and has instructions, I can make it. It still won't be right, but I'll make it. So anyway, so I'm like, I get the eggs out. So I was like, So I text her, and she still gives it to me this day. How do I fry an egg? Because I'm thinking, because she liked, she didn't like scrambled. She wanted a fried egg. It's like, how do you fry an egg? Because I can scramble. That's mix it up. It's like, boom, good to go. So she had to text me how to fry an egg. So, yep, I'm not a cook. I never will claim to be. I can cook the hell out of a steak and a hamburger on a grill.
Yeah.
But that's about all I can do, unless it's a box.
Well, you can still learn, Dino.
I can, and I can heat up a bowl of Campbell's soup like nobody's business.
Nothing wrong with that.
I think my kid can actually cook a ramen better than I can.
I'd believe it.
Speaking of eggs, going back to those of us that just wanted to figure everything about deer hunting out, and avoid this and avoid that. We read a study, I don't remember where it was, but how eggs were least favorite smell for deer. So at the deer camp, we decided that, no, we're not going to have eggs for breakfast, but we had waffles and bacon, and of course the bacon has a little bit of a smell to it also,
right.
But yeah.
So is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I guess the egg derivative has is a component of some chemicals that they use to deter rabbits and deer from eating crops or whatever it is, or maybe gardens, not crops.
I do love me some eggs, and I do too. I'm starting to worry.
Yeah, there you have it, folks. Don't eat eggs during deer season.
Remember that one year down at Camp Ripley, the guys in the smallest camper known to man decided to cook bear bear sausage.
Yeah.
And it's like the whole camper reeks of sausage and everything. It's like, dude, are you kidding me?
That was good bear sausage.
It was good. I'll give it that. It was good bear sausage, but I know I smelled it the whole way to the stand, and yeah.
Well, I just flew out to Colorado recently for a friend's wedding, and we pushed off from the gate in Minneapolis. And as soon as we pushed off and started taxiing, this woman sitting next to me, of course I'm in the middle seat, woman sitting to my left opened a Costco-sized container of hard-boiled eggs.
Oh, my God.
And she shoved those things down her throat until we reached the gate in Denver.
That is awesome.
It was horrible.
Did you
like
ask
it.
for one?
No.
You should have. She was like, hey, can I get me one then?
Never had I've been on some turbulent flights, and I would take that over sitting next to that hard-boiled egg girl.
And I love hard-boiled eggs.
That's good.
Man. Wow.
That's crazy. I'm surprised they let her bring a jar of hard-boiled
Right? How do you?
eggs.
I mean, there's
can't
no way
bring
she bought
shampoo.
those in the airport, right? How did she get that through TSA?
Right. It must have been a medical thing.
Most people have medical things against eggs.
Sorry, these are my emotional support eggs.
I'll sit next to you. I'd have to eat a few eggs too.
That's awesome.
Oh, man. I hate to be in the taxi cab after. So
I know, right? Afterwards, this is a real disaster.
Right?
Yeah, I can't imagine going back to the days of smoking on
Oh,
airplanes.
man. Can you imagine?
Even deer camps
I'd
now.
take that.
The cigar
Right.
smoke and
Yep.
the haze. And
But I knew a guy that we were hunting down south, about 30 minutes south, and it was so funny because he got a deer and I had to go help drag it out. So I'm like, well, where are you hunting at? We walk out to this bog swamp, and there's this lonely Charlie Brown Christmas tree sitting out there that couldn't cover anybody over 180 pounds. And there's a chunk of plywood, 2x2, and there's 8 million cigarette butts around it. And that's what he does. He walks out to the middle of the swamp behind this tree, little chunk of plywood, and smokes cigarettes. Deer come running and blast him. He got the biggest buck every single year, and he's smoking cigarettes the whole time. It's like, how in
I
the
have
world?
had so many people tell me that deer are attracted to the smell of smoke because they're
I have
curious.
heard that, too.
And the only people I hear that from sound like this. Yeah. I'm like, you are just justifying bad behavior.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's an old tale. I mean, that the Indians, Native Americans, used to use smoke as a scent cover.
Well, yeah. And
yeah.
I get that.
So the deer are used to it. So I don't think it would spook them.
And I was always afraid, so during lunch we'd go back and we'd have a campfire and whatnot. And of course I'd take all my stuff off.
Yeah.
And they're all in their orange, and whatnot. And they're just getting covered in smoke. It's like, we have scent-free spray and stuff. It's like,
Well,
you guys
those
smell like a
boys grew up in the
campfire.
old camps when it didn't matter.
It didn't
Well,
matter.
I
It
will
didn't
say
matter.
that, I've taken plenty of smoke baths in my life.
Yeah.
Bathing in the smoke of some evergreen needles.
Yeah.
It smells a little different than your Camel 100s.
That is true. Yep.
Swisher Sweets.
Right,
The
right,
grape ones.
right. So, Rod, do you actually still go to deer camp?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, our deer camp began in 1959. We hear this story, not as much now because, the old timers are not with us anymore.
Right.
But we carry it on how they slept in a tent with pine boughs down and army blankets and all of that. And,
Oh, yeah.
And then I came and my cousins and I were there in 1960 when we had a barrel stove,
Oh, yeah.
dirt floors still. We actually built a shack out of new wood or whatever they called it. And so we were all excited because we got in the Army bunks, which were Army surplus, and we all got on top. We thought this was great. Well, we soon found out that barrel stove heat rises
Yeah,
quite
it's
rapidly.
super hot up there.
As does cigar and cigarette smoke, as does snoring, as does laughing, and I thought this is a rite of passage torture test to see if
It
we can
was.
endure this.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, we didn't sleep much anyhow. We were so excited, but
Yeah.
and that's where I got the title for my column. Daylight in the Swamp. That's how my dad woke us up. And I've talked to so many people that said that's what their dad always said, or grandpa.
Yeah.
It's daylight in the swamp, which came from, I guess, from the logging industry. But
Yeah.
we didn't have a bugle or anything like that. A reveille.
Yeah, I grew up in an area where people used to go for deer camp. I grew up up by Togo, so
Okay.
people would go up there for deer camp, and I lived there, so I was at home. But we always used to visit the deer camps. I remember as a kid going down and selling chocolate bars to the guys at the deer camp. It was great.
Really?
I remember, and I think this thing still sits there today. Is an old train car, and there's this old guys. We'd go down there. I loved it. They'd have a wood stove in there, and they had bunks. I remember walking in there every year to sell them candy bars, and they'd be sitting around a table, playing poker, smoking cigarettes, not hunting, drinking beer.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember the good old days. Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Togo too, here's another one. My dad always told the story of back with the old timers, the immigrants, and there was a sign in Nashwauk, Minnesota, that said Togo, and then it had Nashwauk, and they had an arrow, to go to Nashwauk. Well, people were showing up in Nashwauk that wanted to go, in Togo, they wanted to go to Nashwauk because they thought the sign said to go Nashwauk.
To go now.
So to this day, one of my favorite signs I've ever seen in my life is in Nashwauk.
Yeah.
There's that little community park just north of town, little RV park.
Yep.
There's a big sign right there. You're still in Nashwauk.
Right.
Small town, but you're in Nashwauk, just on the north side of it. Big sign that says Gateway to north of Nashwauk. It's like, no shit.
Hey, it's not a lie, bud. It's not a lie. Because they're proud of that north of Nashville.
Well, that's like my son-in-law when he was first dating our youngest daughter. He was staying with a friend. He's from the cities, of course, 612ers.
Right, back in the day.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he always coming from East Range, which is kind of a different world over there anyhow,
Yep.
going west to Grand Rapids, where we live, north of Grand Rapids. And he and his friend thought, wow, look at that sign. Let's pull in there and eat. And they drove downtown, and they said, well, we're, not much for downtown, but enough. And said, where are the tacos? And the locals said, what are you, nuts? I said, well, yeah, you have a sign out there that says taco night. Well, it's taco night.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's an actual true story.
Yep.
Where's the tacos? We should go to the bar there and tag and ask
right.
for the tacos.
I hear it's taco
corner
night.
bar.
Yeah, I will admit, moving up here, I was like, okay, so I got to get to Grand Rapids, and first time I drove to Grand Rapids, it was from west, from Wyoming, And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to move up here. So how do I get there? 35 goes all the way, which is great. But I'm like, okay, is it Cloquet? And then some of the towns, and then same thing. It's like, okay, is that? There's no way that they named a town Taco Night. Yeah. Like, that's gotta be. That cannot be right. And then it's like, okay, so you learn, the lingo and the names, and it's like, all right, who thought these had to be deer campers that thought of these names?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I thought I was moving up near Pokegama Lake.
Pokegama.
Yes, I did call it Pokey.
I've heard that so many times.
Because I was like, okay, Pokey. I was like, no way, that is not Pokegama. Like, how? Why would they name something like that?
Pokegama.
Yeah.
Yeah, Balsam still has the hunter supper. Guys come from all around and things like that. That's just part of our rich tradition up here.
You're right.
I know Warba, they still have an event for deer opening weekend.
Really?
I want to say Jacobson, pretty close. A lot of the small little communities do. I know Warba does because we donate some print of the ears every year to their hunter supper and stuff like that. So
do you guys do liver and onions and all that stuff?
I grew up with liver and onions. And I bought some not too long ago and put it in my freezer, but my wife refuses to take it out of the freezer.
Good girl.
Yeah.
I wanted it for old time's sake, and she just refuses.
I don't
so
do
I
liver.
have to do it.
I cannot do liver.
I've had some good liver. Had some very good liver.
I remember my parents made me eat it as a kid, and I used to think it was disgusting, but part of me wants to try it again and just eat it.
No.
Yeah.
How about deer heart?
I do like deer hunt.
I do too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact,
Throw some tongue in there too.
Well, I don't know about that.
Have you eaten deer tongue?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's very good.
Okay, we got to see him do that.
Yeah. I think
Well,
that.
you got to get a deer first.
Well, we're going to get a deer, and you're going to
How many
eat
deer
its tongue.
between the
go
two of
find
you? How
one.
many did you get last year?
Me? I did not shoot a deer last year because my son did for me.
Oh, okay.
New season. So
right.
I didn't have to. Pressure was
I
off.
ate on his deer, and then I had deer left over from my Kansas deer because it was so big.
You ate on Roan's deer.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
on Roan's deer. But I still
I'm
have
still eating on that
leftovers
deer.
from my big Kansas deer the year
All right.
before.
Here's the deal. First deer taken this fall by any of us, Rod included.
Okay.
It sounds like you're not going to eat the tongue.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I will cook the tongue.
Oh.
And we will eat it live.
Oh, we got to eat the tongue?
Yes, we're going to eat it during
And no
a
ketchup.
recording.
Okay.
God, no
Or
ketchup.
barbecue sauce.
No ketchup anywhere ever.
We can use salt, though, right?
I will season it and I will cook it and you will eat it.
All right. I'll eat it. I'll
All
try
right,
it.
I'll give it a try.
All right, we're going to do it on air. That's a promise. But now we just
right.
have to follow through and actually harvest something.
Yeah, and also this year, I know we talked about this in the office, that we're doing lever action iron sights this year, right? For
At
firearm.
least at my deer camp for sure.
Oh, really?
I don't officially
Yeah.
have one.
You said you had 30-30.
I have access to a 30-30.
I'm going to use the 45 Colt.
Okay.
That'd be tough for me.
Well, I've got a 30-30 you can use.
Well, I do have one.
Winchester
I'd have to
94.
clean it and take a look at it. I could use it.
I've got one that I just shot this weekend that's ready to go.
I didn't even know you could find guns with without scopes on them.
Right?
Go to henryusa.com. Is that the website?
Okay.
You can get a
Something like
free
that.
catalog right now. It comes with stickers and everything.
Really?
There's
And then
all
you-
kinds of lever action iron sight.
And then I bet I know a guy who can hook you up.
Yep.
I thought when we went from buckhorn, the V sights to a peep sight, I thought, wow,
Right.
this is incredible. And then 4 years later, my dad got a scope, and I thought, whoa, I'm never going back.
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, my deer camp this year, I bought my dad for his 60th birthday a Henry 4570. Beautiful, beautiful gun, iron sights. So he's using that. I'm using my Henry 357 mag.
Yep.
And then my brother-in-law is using the old Winchester 30-30. So
Nice.
we're all lever action iron sights. If you guys want to join,
I'm
I
45
think
Colt
that'd be
now.
awesome.
I actually talked to Winchester this morning to ask him if I could use plus pressure ammo. I can't.
No.
But not in my 1873. But,
Right.
So I'm just going to use regular ammo.
You know, I guess that just means I've got to
Have to
buy
buy a
another
gun.
gun.
You're going to, oh no.
Right? Bummer.
Darn it.
Bummer.
You know, because that Henry X mod is looking real.
That is a nice gun. I just, in a lever gun, I'm not about to buy a synthetic.
No, heck no.
No, but see, I also look at it as it's threaded to where I could add something later on.
To a lever gun with iron sights.
Yeah, Dean.
Yeah, can you imagine shooting an intruder with a 45-70?
He is actually the youngest one here. So no, you are the youngest one here.
He's the youngest one.
Rod by far.
Rod by far. Yeah.
On one leg. This sounds like an article for Whitetails. You guys,
The year
set
of the
this whole
lever
thing
gun.
Yep.
The year of the lever
Yes.
gun. We got to get
Yep.
Rod in on it. You
Yeah.
got to have a lever gun, right?
Yeah,
Probably a
I
dozen
think
or
that's
so.
kind of in the antique section. Yeah. I'm not going back to that. It's hard, the first time shooting when I was missing gear back then, it's hard to get 6 shots off in 20 seconds. I managed it, though.
Oh, I remember those days.
Yeah.
I did it with 30-30 once. I
Yeah.
was shooting that deer 400, 500, 600 yards away.
Yeah, running at full speed.
Oh, yeah. When I was a kid, I thought for sure I could get him.
We don't really do that anymore.
I beg to differ. You still do that.
Okay, I might still. I have trouble controlling myself. I'm not gonna. I get so excited.
Hunting deer like you're hunting ducks.
Right?
Yep.
No,
I have faith.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what Brad Trevine, I call him the legend, because I've known him for a long time. But he says when he hunts ducks and even deer occasionally, he has shoot and scare, shoot and release. He's got all those covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't waste a whole lot of time.
No, you don't. No, you don't. There was one time I was in a ground blind. Probably 80 yards behind you? Maybe not quite, but facing the other direction. He was in the box blind. Mm-hmm. And I was taking a little nap because daylight's, another 20 minutes. So I'm taking a nap. And of course, I obviously sleep over past. And I kind of just starting to wake up. I was like, okay, it's just light. It's light enough. Okay. Look at my clock. It's like, shooting hours. I get ready to grab my gun. Boom! I was like, what the? And I about dropped my gun against the blind, and I had to clean up my shorts because I fell out of my chair. And then another boom, and I was like, oh my God, I think he's shooting at me. And so I wait a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm going to wait for the blind door to open because I could hear his door open. So I'm waiting, and of course I'm shaking because I about peed my pants. And I was like, okay, well, now there's no deer around.
Oh, no.
And so I hear his door open, so I get out. I walk out there. I was like, did you get him? Well, I think so. There was 2 of them.
That is never the right answer.
There was 2 of them. I go, you shot it 2? I was like, well, I was wondering because you shot pretty quick. So we walk over, and sure enough, one ran right into the bullet. That was awesome. And then the other one we did track a little bit. So I was like, that is sweet.
Yeah,
So
in my area, you can shoot more than one.
you
deer.
can, yes, yeah, city limit. So
Yes.
we had the tags and everything.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Thank you for clarifying.
I just want everybody to know it was
and it
completely
was shooting
legal.
light because I
Yeah.
remember I woke up and I was
Just
like,
barely.
just
It was
barely.
like that
And-
first couple minutes.
Well,
And
at first
I know
I was
you
like-
had counted, but how many spots did they both have?
No, there was a few. No, that one didn't. None of those
None
two.
of them had spots.
I've never shot a deer with spots.
But I was thinking as it was, and I was in the woods more, so it was still, it was shooting light, but I was like, was he shooting at a tree?
I was in an opening, so I had a little better view.
You were in
than
a big opening to where, it was still, because there was times that I think even that afternoon, that evening, I was like, I can't see nothing. I'm headed out. So I walk out, and you were still in the stand for another 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Because you could
Yeah.
see more than I could, but it's like, I can't see through my scope. I might as well just, chuck my gun at him at this point. So,
No.
yep. But yeah, that time I had
Sold
changed my
yourself.
drawers. Of course, that's not the only time you've done that to me.
No.
Yeah. We were out at the plantation one time, and I'm walking through the woods, going to check out my stand, and boom, I hit the deck. I thought it was shooting at me.
I was shooting in the opposite direction of you, by the way.
You were, but yeah, where I was at,
Firearm safety is important.
It
it
is
felt
important.
like you were shooting at
Well,
me.
that was a 300 Weatherby that day.
That thing was loud, and I was only 30 yards from you, and it sounded like you were right beside me. And I come walking out, he had a deer.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah,
We're going to do a little freestyle here. What is the first deer hunting memory that comes to mind, Rod?
Oh, I would definitely say the first deer I shot, without question.
No.
As most of us would think that
Right.
way. I thought I made the greatest shot in the world, the biggest buck ever, and here it was. It was a button buck, but by the time I got back to junior high, 8th grade,
8-pointer.
Well, I didn't go that far. It was a fork one.
There you go.
Yeah, I had some honesty in me.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, and I think being with my dad, you know, I mean, I was on my own. Back in the day, of course, when you were 12, we couldn't hunt until we were 12.
Yep.
You know, and that begs the question of how young is too young. You know, we've dealt with that in the magazine, but that was pretty special. And then I was with my son when he shot his first deer. So yeah, I would say that. But some of my greatest memories, though, were camp preparation, working on stands, and listening to the stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hanging out with the old guys for sure.
I mean, that's the whole point of deer
Oh
camp.
man, I miss
you know?
that so much.
The harvest is just the cherry on top.
It's the pinnacle but almost the reason you did it was to go back to that camp and show it off and talk about it.
Right.
To show those, you know, the old guys. Look at that guy,
Right.
you know. And no matter what it was, even where I was, I remember shooting my first deer was a 4-pointer. And all the old guys still came down to check it out and be like, "Good job."
How many points was it when you first shot it?
No, that one was straight 4 points. There was no stretch there. I mean, I'd love to say it was bigger, but it wasn't.
Well,
Yeah.
my first was, I call it a fork horn, but
It was a 4-corner.
it was a 3-point.
Oh, see, so you're
It only
a
split on
liar.
one
You know,
side.
I guess my first deer was my Minnesota buck.
Jesus.
And he was about the
Bigger
size of
than
the
that.
one. Yeah, he's bigger than the one behind us, and that was bow hunting.
Man.
My first year out here. So that one.
You're welcome.
Yep, thank you.
And it didn't ruin it for you, right?
No, it didn't, because I was like, I knew that's like, and everybody said, "This is the biggest buck you ever shoot in Minnesota."
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
could be. I want to top it. I've shot some smaller bucks since then, but it still didn't ruin it because just the joy of hunting.
Right.
So a few years after that, because I never hunted with Dad a whole lot. I never hunted with him in Kansas, you know, for deer hunting. So one year, I think it was the year after I got this guy, then I got my new bow, and I went back to Kansas for Christmas, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring another stand with me, and you're going to sit with me in its tree, and we're going to film it. You know, that's kind of when we're getting in Tacticam and filming our hunts.
Yep.
So he came with me. I set up a stand. We found a spot, set up 2 stands. I was in this tree. He was, you know, pretty close beside me, a little bit below, and he sat with me, and it was a couple of the coldest mornings ever. But that was the coolest time to nudge him, you know, "Dad, there's a deer." And so he wakes up, turns the camera on, you know, and just to watch the deer. We saw a couple of really nice bucks walk by, but they were too far because it was archery hunting, 100 yards, and it's like, God, that thing is gorgeous. And then the turkey, and just watching the sun come up behind us and everything. I mean, that was cool to sit with Dad in a tree
Right.
to hunt like that,
Right.
because I never had that. You know, we'd gone on other hunts, you know, pig hunt, stuff like that, just walking around. But just to sit in a tree and hunt with him was kind of cool, because I never done that.
Right.
And with the two bucks I harvested in Kansas, he wasn't with me when I could harvest one, but he always came down right afterwards and helped me grab it, you know, drag it out and whatnot. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, the
for
first
sure.
deer I got was here.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, my first elk, big, mature 6x6 bull.
Yeah.
On, you know, public land hunt out in Colorado. It was actually an over-the-counter surplus tag. Yeah, and
That doesn't count then.
I thought you borrowed that elk.
right. I just
even know
stumbled
you
across
shot
it in the woods,
right?
No, but after I harvested that elk, everybody was like, "Well, that just ruined elk hunting for you." You know, like that is a once in a lifetime elk for most people. You know, unless you're fortunate enough to hunt elk every year,
Right.
But no, I mean, I would go on an elk hunt any day.
Yep.
Really?
And I would harvest a cow if that's all that
I'd love.
you know.
Yeah.
Like elk hunting is so much fun. But yeah,
But there's not much oxygen where they are, right?
it's tough.
Yeah, I'm way too fat for that.
I mean, I was up
Right.
at
I want it in
12,000
Minnesota,
feet.
where it's like 1,000 feet.
Like an 8th mile.
Right.
I'm solid for that.
Right. Well, I think we should turn it back to Rod here.
Right.
Definitely. You had another question for him.
I have a couple questions, Rod.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
My first one is going to be, looking back on all your time with MDHA, what would you say you are most proud of within this organization?
Well, first of all, probably the fact that we're here 44 years later.
Yes.
Second of all, we've prepared and I think prepared very well young hunters. I think that's the key to the whole thing.
Yeah.
We've also perpetuated camaraderie, among the hunting people. I think that's totally important. We've instilled a lot of ethical behavior. We've done so much for educating hunters and non-hunters, and hopefully anti-hunters. We've done all the things that anybody would want to do to help deer and deer hunting. We've been there through the thick and thin of winters, habitat creation. We've been there setting seasons. We've just been there for the deer hunter and the deer herd. And I'm so proud of what we've done. As I look back, I think we've accomplished, except for one thing, and I think we expected to have at least 10% of the deer hunting licenses sold as members.
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten there, and I think there are varying reasons for that. Some are there's just so many organizations out there now. Other factors could be there were a lot more deer over the years after we, were created in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And just in the last couple of years, our deer herd's gone down the take. But it's still way, way above what it was in 1971 and all the way through the 70s. Having guys like you, quality people that are making it your life's work to do this is also so fulfilling. To go to the banquets and to see, like my granddaughter win another rifle.
Oh, it was a nice rifle.
And she doesn't hunt.
No doubt.
She just loves MDHA. And just to see how multi-generational we are and to see how respected we are, not only locally and statewide, but nationally. If you've ever been to you guys have, but you go to some of these places and they've heard of MDHA, especially the Four Corn camps. In our magazine, we were recognized in the year 2000 by the NRA, the only year we've ever entered it, for the national best magazine of the year for nonprofit. And I mean, we're up against Delta and Ducks Unlimited and just what we've done for the deer and deer herd and deer hunting. I couldn't be more proud.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And the people that I've met over the years, and just so many that I just ran into one the other day, Max the Whiskey from Falls at a soccer game. I hadn't seen him in 10 or 15 years, and we talked about the old days, it's just one outstanding organization.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, it is the highest honor I could ever hope for to now be the executive director of this organization, and I cannot thank you enough for all of the work, time, and energy that you and the other founders that we've mentioned tonight put into this. I mean, it's
right.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, we wouldn't
Thanks.
be here if it wasn't for you and other.
Yeah. And you know what else is really wonderful is the fact that in the hunting fraternity, it's not like sports. I played sports, through college, and once that's gone, that's gone. You know what I mean? But for the deer hunting, populace and the MDHA, it doesn't make any difference how old you are.
Right.
And you can be 6 years old at a banquet or 86.
Yep.
You're all part of like I said, the common cause. And it's just doing this podcast, my first podcast, and I just like to say the word podcast. That sounds so good. I was going to do my public radio voice and say I love podcasts. But It's a labor of love, and it's really been quite a ride. It really has.
Yeah.
So, well,
Yeah,
we appreciate
that's awesome.
all you've done.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and myself, like Ed Schmidt, I've got to acknowledge Ed. All the years, the 40 years we did the magazine together, and he was, president for I think 4 years, and so yeah, and guys like him, and all the way back, the founders and the people who have just dedicated their time. People don't understand what it takes to dedicate yourself and to going to meetings and traveling and working on banquets. It's incredible what people do at our volunteers do at the banquets. And I mean, it's just, behind the scenes. I get to be out there, with a magazine and get featured in a podcast and a podcast. Yeah, but it just, it's a total committed, dedicated, loyal effort by all of our people over the years. And it will continue to be with guys like you and gals like we have. Yeah. I don't know if I can say gals. I think I can.
Oh,
You can say gals.
You can say
Oh,
gals.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I would echo that 100%.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to go to a lot of meetings and a lot of banquets around the state. And every single time I leave that event thinking, wow, what a great group of people.
Yeah.
Well, and we see it differently at the state office. We help them for their fundraisers, for their banquets and everything, but we don't really get down to down to the weeds of it and what it takes to put it on. I mean, we still volunteer for our local chapter, but not to the extent that some of these people do. And it is amazing what they do. And I love going to our local chapter, and it's like, wow, you guys all put this together.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the amazing stuff we do, at the state office and everything. So, I mean, it's a great organization to be a part of. And,
100%.
And, my wife will say it, you live and breathe MDHA. I said, yep, I look at my calendar for the next month. I think I've got one free weekend that doesn't involve either MDHA or hunting, because the youth season is actually kind of my weekend off in a way from MDHA, but yet I'm still
Thinking about MDHA.
still thinking about it,
living
and
MDHA.
living it, because of course, the kids get a deer, we're posting it, we're on there, we're thinking about it. So it's, since I started, I live and breathe MDHA and deer hunting, and
I mean, what better cause is there?
I'm reminded of what one of the big three, I'm not going to say, the sporting organizations said to me back in the, probably early 80s. When he came to a banquet, and their organization had well-established banquets. And I said, what do you think? He says, well, first of all, he says, you got to get rid of the kids and the wives. I said, what are you talking about? He says, guys will spend way more money if they don't have their kids there and if they don't have their wives there.
Probably true.
And I said, no, that's not what we're all about. Now, a few years later, everybody's incorporating the kids. And the wives are an integral part, equal part of everything that we do. But I'll never forget that. He says, you got to get rid of the kids and the women. I said, that's our future.
Yeah,
Right?
it is.
Absolutely.
Well, and the funny thing is I was lucky enough to win a gun at a local banquet. What's the first thing I do?
Fixed.
That's what they said.
They always
twice.
say that.
That's what they said twice. So the first thing I do is it was on a table of guns. So there's multiple, options to choose from, or a table of prizes, because there's other prizes. First thing I do is I grab my wife and go, let's go pick a gun. She goes, you want my input? It's like, well, why not?
Right.
It's like, what I have, And so she goes, well, I like that one. I go, well, I don't really like that one. Well, I like that one. That's not my camo pattern. And she goes, what don't you have? I go, I don't have a lot of these.
I don't have a 22 LR in Muddy Girl camo.
That is not what I chose. I chose a Henry 22 LR. So,
okay.
But
Muddy
I
Girl
mean,
But it wasn't the Golden Boy, right?
it wasn't. It was just the regular. It wasn't the garden gun, but it was a regular. But she goes to a lot of the banquets with me, and hell, I think she spends as much money as I do, and she's been lucky enough to win, quite a few times, and And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be able to spend as much, honestly, because she'd probably say, well, you're going to this banquet, you have this much to spend. But now that she's with me, we have both sets of money. I'm just saying.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So
I agree.
Yeah.
Bring the family.
Right.
Yes, and the kids have fun.
The kids have a blast.
Like I said, last year Aiden was lucky enough to win the Wheezy Outdoors hunt that was donated. So we went on that this past weekend to go grouse hunt. Tough weekend, I'll give it that.
Windy.
So, too windy. The birds, the birds we found were skittish, educated. There's a lot of people out. I've never seen so many
really?
side by sides
Yeah.
and guys out.
There you go.
Yeah, they were everywhere because it was a beautiful weekend.
Right.
So the cool thing is Wheezy's going to give him another opportunity
Right.
to go out and get his first grouse. So that kudos to them for doing that. But he's so excited. He loves to hunt the Four Corn Camp 1 and 2.
Yep.
I mean, that's what it's all about. And he had a blast at the banquet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, and like you said, that's our future, our kids.
Well, yeah.
And then obviously involving the spouses to, because they're going to benefit from
Keep
it too.
those marriages together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Rod, before we let you go, which we will, I promise,
We'll untie him.
I've got one more question, but it is a two-part question.
Okay. Ooh, I better write it down.
Yeah.
There you go. It should be pretty simple to follow. But no, if you think about the future of MDHA, 5, 10, 20, 100 years from now, what is your biggest hope for this organization? And what advice do you have for us to see that become a reality?
Basically, I really think our message is so sound. It's conveying the message to the populace and to get more members. And I think what you are doing with this and what I know you are doing for the organization within your roles is just keep doing what you're doing and keep recruiting, keep enhancing the idea of the hunt, involve families. The Four Corn camps are so important. Just do everything you can to help us help the deer herd and deer hunting. I just can't even offer any advice except stay the course. And the course has just been such a quality course. And we had some rough times, obviously. Every organization will at certain times. And we've had some issues and maybe even hopefully some of the, I'm not going to get into it, but those people that are anti MDHA or anti-RGS or Ducks Unlimited or Delta, whatever it might be, keep in mind that what we want to do is actually what they want to do. And without dedicated effort by volunteers and people like you guys, the anti-hunters might win, but I don't think so. I think we're just too strong. So we just need to keep up, stay the course, and do what you're doing.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, thank
Rambling,
you.
but yeah.
That was perfect. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
taking
guys.
the
Yeah,
time to
thanks
be
for
here.
coming on.
No,
Yeah,
thanks for
appreciate
joining
it.
us.
Really enjoyed this, I'll tell you.
Enjoyed having you on.
We could do like 2 or 3 more
I'd
with
love
Rod.
to.
I
Right.
feel
I'd
high
love
tech
to.
now.
I mean,
you
heck,
know.
we should do like once every couple months or once every month in the corner with Rod.
In the
There
corner
you
with
go.
Rod.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know about it in the corner, but
How about tied down?
tied down with Rod.
We tied Rod down.
How about, since he loves the word so much, daylight in the podcast?
Oh,
with
yeah.
Rod.
Daylight in the podcast.
There you go. All right, we could do that. Yeah, I think
Or
we're
it's
very cool.
Podcast in the swamp. Take your pick.
We'll just do whitetails forever.
Yeah, whitetails
forever.
Yep, yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, thank you
Awesome.
guys for
Thank you.
not only all you do, but thank you for inviting me to
thanks for
ramble on
coming
here.
along.
No.
So
Thank you for laying the groundwork
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
I mean,
Yes.
the foundation.
What we get to do every day.
For what we get to do every day.
yeah, I didn't do anything more than our grandparents, our dads, our uncles, aunts, moms have done. We just did it in a more formal way.
Right.
We just took their vision and their love and their appreciation of the outdoors, and we just put it into an organization that we are proud to call the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association.
Right.
Yeah.
For all the hunters, all the people, and all the wildlife. So
What you just said is what every true humble hero says.
Right.
Yep.
And I would call you a humble hero.
Well, I'm fortunate enough to be around, after all the years. There are some that worked hard in the early years that just, like Dave Shaw, died fairly young. But his family is carried on. Jim Lamb's family, Wes Libby's family, and all the other people that helped us. Ed Schmitz, of course.
Yeah.
Family is incredible. So, yeah.
Yeah.
The legend
Great.
lives on.
Right.
MDHA.
Great bunch of guys for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
To start
Just
with,
like you guys.
We hope we can
Well,
do you proud.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I'll be collecting my $5 for meet you.
We'll get it to you. Don't worry about it.
Accolades, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, thanks again, guys.
No,
Well,
thank you.
and we appreciate you being here for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it was good to hear all those stories.
Well, there you go.
Awesome.
Till
Well, I think
next
with
time.
that,
Thank you.
thanks a lot, Rod.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association has been building our hunting and conservation legacy over the past 40 plus years through habitat, education, advocacy, and legislation in Minnesota for Minnesota.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association and wolf.report proudly sponsor this podcast. However, please note that the opinions, topics, and guests featured may not necessarily align with the views, beliefs, goals, or mission of our sponsors.